This is the closing night for the 2018 Honolulu Surf Film Festival, honoring George Downing.
We've had a really great month of films. I just want to take a moment to thank all the special guests and speakers who joined me on all these impromptu Q&As that I had to moderate. And there is a feature this year called She is the Ocean. It made a big splash during our festival, and we're so happy to be joined by director Inna Blokhina, who's here with us tonight. She's over there. And along with subjects Keone and Andrea Muller. So the first award we'll be presenting is the Director's Choice Award. This film presents a milestone in the representation of women in the surf genre. And it is a film about women and their relationship to the ocean, brought to us by a female filmmaker. I am so happy to announce that the Director's Choice Award goes to She is the Ocean by director Inna Blokhina.
Thank you so much. Wow. It's so nice to be here. It's always a big deal to come to Hawaii for me, because I'm from Russia and I don't have the ocean, warm, friendly ocean in my country, and I had so much love the ocean. I spent today all day in the ocean, and I hope that this film will inspire people to love it and to care as I am, and I hope this film will inspire women to pursue their dreams. And I would like to thank all the heroes who was in my film. They was so much inspired me. I was teach a lot. So thank you, Jenny, for your fantastic story. Beautiful and amazing, and I love you so much. And thank you for your aloha, because I understand that it's all about love, and it's so big pleasure to be here. So thank you so much.
Okay, and now to present the Audience Choice Award for Best Feature, please join me in giving a warm welcome to longtime friend and collaborator of the festival from the Bud Browne Archives, Anna Trent Moore.
The great American author John Steinbeck wrote, "We have only one story. All novels, all poetry are built on the never-ending contest within ourselves." And he was right. Because the human story is our story, our humanity. They are the stories that move us, touch us deeply, and inspire. The film that did all of this and voted as the audience favorite and receiving this year's Bud Browne Film Archive Award was Momentum Generation.
Thank you guys so much. This was the best audience that we played the film to. It was so great to bring it back to Hawaii. We'd like to dedicate this to Todd Chesser. Jeannie's here tonight, and Todd, who's an anchor in our film and such an impact and influential person in Hawaii. We'd like to dedicate it to him, his memory and his inspiration. Thank you. Thank you.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, the man of the evening, Mr. George Downing. I just want to write our love and aloha to our kapuna, George Downing. It gives us great pleasure to present this humble little glass memento to the Downing Ohana.
Thank you for recognizing my father. There's one special person that I need to make sure you all know, and that's my sister Kaiulu. Please stand, Kaiulu. My sister is very dear to us, and she helped take care of my dad in the last few years. So we need to make sure you know her. And thank you very much.
Everyone, and welcome. I too would like to acknowledge the sponsors of this year's festival, who has helped make possible another year of surf films and celebrations. I would also like to thank Taylor Chang, the director of films, and Sarah Fang, who harnessed another fantastic collection of films for us to enjoy and honor our history. Ladies, once again, you rocked it. And to all of you here tonight, a big mahalo nui for gathering to celebrate not only the history of our sport, but also to honor our surfing kapuna this evening, beloved Mr. George Downing. With open hearts, it is our great honor to welcome the Downing Ohana. Mahalo for gracing us with your presence this evening. George's sons, Keone Downing, Kainoa Downing, and his daughter, Kaiulu Downing. And we thank their wives and George's grandchildren and great-grandchildren for being with us. From here, if you drive up the busy King Street until you cross beneath the freeway overpass of H1 freeway, you will enter Wailai Avenue. Look immediately to your right and you will see it, a lone building. You cannot help but notice it because this one is different from the other string of shops that connect together to form the old shopping district of Kaimuki. It is strong, solid. It is Downing, Hawaii, the oldest surf shop in all of Hawaii Nei, and its founder was Mr. George Downing. If you didn't know George personally, you certainly knew of him. Forgive me for being so bold, but I know this to be true from my father, Buzzy Trent, and Bud Browne. George Downing created big wave surfing, and through it all, he was joined with a small brotherhood of men who in their quiet reserve simply did what they did because of private will and desire. Creating what most people believe to be the first big wave gun and the removable fin, George Downing revolutionized big wave surfing, an innovator who cherished the heritage of the sport he loved and respected by the big wave riders that would follow him. He was a quiet maverick who, like all great minds, stood apart from the crowd. He possessed an assuredness which was planted in deep wisdom and wrapped in subtlety and virtue. After my father, Buzzy Trent, passed away, I went to see his old friend George. There was a strong bond between them, a history that went long. Filled with unfinished grief, it seemed like a natural place for me to gravitate to because George was a healer. After I greeted him, rather than responding immediately, he studied my face for a moment, and then he said, "Do you know what the difference between an acquaintance and a friend is?" When I didn't answer, he continued, "When you say, 'Let's go,' an acquaintance would say, 'Where?' But a friend would say, 'When?'" And he paused, and George Downing was the master of the pause. And in his George way, quietly said, "Buzzy would have said when." I don't doubt that he shared this story and wisdom to others before me because I am no one special. But he was caring enough to know that this is what I needed to hear. And that is what was magnificent about George Downing. He stood for truth, strength, and loyalty, always. He said what he meant, and he meant what he said, setting the example in the belief that if you come from a place of conviction, which is born of truth, you should never be afraid to stand tall, even if it meant standing alone. A selfless steward who perpetuated the ongoing call to preserve and protect the Aina and precious ocean shoreline of the place that he cherished with all of his heart, Hawaii. And perhaps nowhere was his undaunting standards more prevalent than when he ran the eddy. He was a firm, uncompromising, fearless decision maker. For when he made that call, the one the entire surfing world waited for in great anticipation, it was because it was to be then, and only then, he was certain that it would prove to be a moment of truth. And there were many truths to learn from George Downing, and each one was a gift, a jewel, a precious exchange that, like all precious things got, you found yourself polishing over and over again in your mind. One that I find myself doing so is a time when I was planning a trip to Tahiti. I asked him if he had ever been. He told me that he had many chances to go, but no, he said. And then after a brief moment of contemplation, he continued. He said, "No need go Tahiti. Tahiti is in Hawaii." And of course, as always, he was right. For I understood the decipheredness of what he meant, that the connection between both places had no beginning nor end. And now, while it appears that George Downing is no longer walking the planet, in a way, he always will be, because George was simply magic, and the world needs magic. And most certainly, he has left enough of it to last us all a long, long time. So, here's to you, George Downing. You were a surfer, shaper, environmentalist, philosopher, healer, teacher, friend, father, grandfather, husband, and woven through it all, you were this, always this, a man of water. And so tonight, we dedicate this evening's film, The Essence, to you, because you lived it. You lived the essence of surfing. Mahalo, mahalo nui. Before we begin, gentlemen, Mr. Peter Cole, who's been with us every single year for the past 9 years, is off vacationing, drinking wine, and driving around in France. And he was very sad to miss this evening, but he made sure that I had some of his words, and he asked if I would share it to you, and I said that I would. So here it is from Peter. George Downing is, in my opinion, the surfer that revolutionized big wave surfing in my lifetime, more than anyone else. He was my mentor and friend that I will say has no equal when it comes to surfboard design, waterman talent, and wave knowledge. I first met George in the summer of 1948 when he came over to the mainland, returning a trans-Pacific yacht from Honolulu to San Diego with Raleigh Forsyth and Russ Takaki. It was at Malibu during a big summer swell when he broke his surfboard Pepe in half against the Malibu pier. Bob Simmons repaired it with fiberglass and resin. This introduced the Hawaiians to the new method of waterproofing and strengthening a surfboard, introduced the surfing world to the surfing world by genius Bob Simmons. I remember the fall of 1958 when Rick Gregg and I first surfed Sunset Beach on a big day. Ricky on a Velzy bump board and me on a Robinson sweetboard, which were totally unsuitable for the 10 to 12 feet sunset waves. I had a record 19 swims and Ricky 17 swims that day. George informed us that we needed to get semi-gun boards to ride those North Shore waves. Ricky got himself a Pat Kern gun, and I got myself a Joe Quigg semi-gun, and our surfing changed from that time on. I will cherish the times George would drop by Rocky Point House during the winters and talk about Buzzy and other mutual friends we shared in the 50s through to the first decade of the 21st century. George was a friend and fellow waterman that I will miss, but is very well respected today by his two sons, very well represented today by his two sons, Keone and Kainoa. Thank you, George, for contributing so much to my life as a good friend and fellow waterman. Peter Cole. And now I'm going to hand it over to you gentlemen, starting with Brandy Rurick.
It's always a pleasure to be here at the film festival, and I really like to thank Taylor and Sarah for the great job that they do. Everybody give them a big hand. It's kind of fun to be up here tonight because usually I'm the youngest guy, but you know, George, Cam, and Derek are here, so I'm not the little gremmy anymore, so I feel pretty good. I had the privilege of meeting George when I first surfed in the Makaha meet back in the early 60s, and I was a young kid kind of growing up, and George was like the master, and he had won it a few times, and I sort of, you know, always was enamored but how good he was and how smooth he was, and I thought that's how you really should become a surfer, is make a hard thing look easy, and George was the one that really did that. And then for me personally, it was great because I got involved in the surf industry really at a young age, and at 15, George sort of took me under his wing, and I became sort of an apprentice to him and a mentor. And a funny little story, we were working up in Kaimaki, which is where the Downing shop is now. Back then it was the old Greg Knoll shop. And George taught me how to foil a fin. And for those of you that have worked on boards, you know, a surfboard fin's always kind of weird to work with. And to foil it is when you put the taper on it and use the soft pad. And George said, okay, you take the soft pad and you start going like this. And the first couple passes I went like this, and all of a sudden it caught on the edge of the fin, went, and there the soft pad went flying off, and I went, oh my God, you know, I've got to deal with George. And he just looked at me and says, no, that's okay. Everybody does that the first time. And so it's funny that for me, my first really impression of George as a mentor was how to foil a surfboard fin. And I was 15 years old at the time, and then I went on, and then George actually showed me how to shape a board, and he showed me how to band the rails, and it was the first, we're talking as boards were going from long boards to short boards, and he was beginning to show me how to actually shape a board. And the designs that George used, this is back in the 60s now, and there was a surf contest at Haleiwa, and George had this design, and I was in a heat, I think Jock might have been in it, and Jeff Hackman was in it, and George showed up with his board, and the board was pigmented pink. It was kind of weird that he had this pink board, but that was sort of George's, you know, standard color that he liked. And he loaned me this board, and I went out, and it was the first time that I ever was able to beat Jeff Hackman, and I was like, oh my God. And the design of that board, the bottom shape of that board, I used for the next 10 years of my surfboard design. And to this day, I still use the design characteristics that I learned from George and that. But I want to say that George and I, he was like my mentor, and I got to know his family. And I want to say to Kai and Keone and the rest of the crew here that I'm really glad you guys came, because it's really an honor to pay tribute to somebody who, George wasn't one of those chest beating kind of guys. George always said, let your actions do the talking for you. And to this day, I've always used that as my emphasis throughout my whole life. And George was running all the contests back in the day, and then obviously I became involved in the contests and went on to run all the Triple Crown events. And it was always like, do the job, let the job speak for you, don't speak for yourself. And I've used that to this day. And one last little thing, we were in Australia during the World Contest in 1970, and George was the team captain, and I was on the team, and Keone was on the team, and Dennis Pang, and quite a few other guys that are here tonight. And George was kind of the champion of the underdog, and it was really funny because there was this girl who, back in those days, it was late 1970, so it was kind of a little bit still the hippie days, and there was this girl that kind of was a free spirit, and she showed up, and all the security guys were trying to get rid of this gal, and George said, no, leave her alone, leave her alone. And it was a funny story because we were staying in this hotel, and in the middle of the night, the security guys broke into George's room thinking they would find this girl with George. And George, I was in the room next to George, and George ran the security guy out of the room, punched the guy out, and said, hey, you know, no way will you ever find me with another girl. He says, I'm happily married, and I got a great family, and they are here tonight, and thank you for that.
I moved to Waikiki from Kaiulu, and I met George, I think it was 1953. I was about 8 years old, and I lived across the street from Queens. And there's this place that, during the years all the kids gravitated to. And it's called the Waikiki Beach Center. And George, at that time, George and his family ran it. And it was, you rent the surfboard, rent goggles and stuff like that. And so I grew up in that era. And I surfed Queens a lot. And George was always out at Queens. And the first time I surfed the first break, that's when the waves were really big. I was kind of kooking around on the inside. And George paddled by me, and he said, "Hey, kid, come outside with me." So I went, "Oh, okay." So I was about 13. So I paddled out with him. So he said, "Okay, look, go on this side, go on the left side." I said, "Okay." And he said, "Look inside, you see that chair?" It was a bench, on Waikiki had benches in those days. And he said, "Okay, line up with the bench, go a little bit on this side. When the waves come, let the first one go. And then catch the next wave and go left." I said, "Go left?" He said, "Yeah, go left." So go left. He said, "Why do I want to go left?" I said, "You go left. When you come back around, you cut all the guys off." I said, "Oh, okay." So went left and followed his instructions. And, cut all the guys off. And then I came across and I went, "Oh, I had the wave all to myself." That's how I learned to surf Queens. And through my life, he was always, I'd see him every once in a while. And when I was 16, I bought my first foam board, and from the Waikiki Beach Center. And it was, I used to work at a car wash on the weekends, so I saved up $70, and I thought, well, that's plenty enough money. So I went to, George said, "Oh yeah, I've got new boards down at the beach center. Come buy one." I said, "Okay." So I showed up and had my $70, and I said, "George, I want that." He said, "Okay, $140. $140. George, I only got $70. He said, "Kid, okay, take the board, pay me later." So I said, "Okay." I never paid him for that $70. But I see him through the years and we joke about it. I said, "No worries, no problem." So, he helped me a lot of ways during my surf time. When I first came back from the mainland, I was, maybe 19. I went over there and fooled around, surf around California. And I didn't know, I hadn't been in touch with my dad. My mother had passed away, so my dad just kind of whoop. And so I knew where my sister lived. She lived in Hawaii Kai. So I borrowed my friend's motorcycle. So I was, going down to met my sister and said, "Okay, your dad lives down in Makali Street." Okay. So I was going back to Makali Street and I get pulled over by a cop. Because I'm, blasting it out. Right in Kainoa highway. And then he said, "Okay, do you get license?" "No." "Whose bike is this?" "My friend's." And then, "Okay, let me run this through." Runs it through, comes back, it's stolen bike. Not my bike. I didn't do that. My friend stole a bike. So he said, "Okay." He said, what's your name?" I told him my name. He said, "Yeah, okay." He let me go. Took the bike and I took it back to my friend's house. I said, "Hey, stolen bike. What'd you let me use stolen bike for?" So he said, "No." He was a University of Hawaii student. So anyway, that brings me to the part. A couple of little stories about how George helped me through my life. I saw him down at Beach Center one day, and I had to go to court, and man, I don't have money. And so we're talking, and I told him my problem. And he said, "Yeah, don't worry, I'll fix you up." I said, "Okay." So I have a friend that's a lawyer. I said, "Okay." So he got me. I went to the police, the court, and then with this lawyer, and he got me off for nothing. Nothing happened. So, you know, I remember George setting me up with that. And later on in life, the same guy was a lawyer. I went to speeding court in Wahiawa and I saw Jock. Jock, you gotta remember, you sung and danced in front of the lawyer, in front of the judge, and he let you go. I don't know if you had a speeding ticket or not. I don't know if you remember. I remember I seen you back home. Hey, Jock! So, anyway, when I went to court, I was going, oh man, I'm losing my license. And I went up to, you know, my turn came and I went, and it was the judge. It was the judge who was the lawyer who got me off in the beginning. And he looked at me and went, dismissed. So, that's about it. You know, oh, one more story. About 1969, 69 at the Big Surf. Yeah. So Tiger Sparrow and I were driving around. You know, this is the year when those houses, I think it was Keiki. Yeah, all of them ended up on the road. And so, you know, the day after went down, oh, nasty. But the waves are huge, and Tiger and I went up and down the coast for about 3 or 4 days looking for surf. It's just so big. And so we said, okay, let's go to Macau. Went to Macau a couple times. So it was about 5 days where the surf was just too huge. Yeah, it was too huge. On one day coming back, we you know, after going to Macau, we stopped by Mauna Kea, and we looked like, hey, 2 guys are out, 1 guy's out, oh yeah, 2 guys. So we said, okay, we go. So we paddled out, and paddling out, you know, it was big, but I didn't think it was that big. But paddling out, all of a sudden it closed out in the channel. And it's me and Tiger, so we turned our boards over, and we did that about 2 waves, and we barely made it out. And so we paddled out, and then the first guy I see is George Downing. He goes, hey, Keith. Hey, Keith. And so I paddled up. Oh, man, waves big, yeah. I said, where are you lining up? So he told me to line up. And then I said, who's the guy over there? He said, Keone Hollinger. Keone Hollinger, way on that side, all by himself. And so Tiger and I caught a couple waves. The biggest waves I think I ever surfed, even bigger than Waimea, that one day was huge. We got some easy 20-foot surfing. Me and Tiger riding 8.6 boards, and he had a 17.5, and I had an 18.5. And you know, we were doing this down the wave, and so we caught a couple, and about the 3rd wave I wiped out and went in. That's it for me. And so I look, oh, there's Tiger way down the beach grabbing his board. And then so we left, and then through the years I'd always bring this up to George. I said, George, you remember that day? Oh yeah, and, you know, we'd always talk about that day. It was just so memorable. And you know, through the Eddie too, he was did all the Eddies, and he always asked me to be a judge, and you know, from our connection. So he is a great guy, great guy.
What an honor to be with all of you, especially the Downing Ohana and this panel. I'll share just a few stories. I've known him for years, but towards the later years, we'd always go cruising, and he'd always call me, and he'd always want to go all over. One of the most memorable, just when he was starting out, he said, if you can imagine, 11 years old, Pearl Harbor hits. Mom's divorced, his 2 other siblings, getting ready to go. The brother of the mom tells them, you guys got to move to Florida, dangerous. Barbed wire on the beaches, everything. Uncle George goes to the beach, talks to Duke, talks to Sammy, you know, Steamboat and all those guys. He goes, hey, Duke, Bolt, you guys heard anything about Florida? He goes, yeah, boy, Laddie, what do you guys want to know about Florida? He goes, what? Got girls over there? He said, oh, the girls in Florida, beautiful, Laddie. You're going to love the girls over there. He goes, how about the beach? Nice beach? Oh, white sandy beach as far as you can see. He goes, the water warm? He goes, oh, like a bathtub. Unbelievable. He goes, surf, get surf in Florida? I go, laddie, Florida, surf. I go, no more surf. Swear to God, they're getting ready to go to the airport. He runs away. 11 years old kid, stays back. Mom leaves with her brother and sister, goes there, stays back. So he's like a Manuela boy, and all the people took care of him. From the Beach Boys, Uncle Wally Forsythe, he looked at all those guys. And that's why he loved the people so much. He loved the Hawaiian people, and he loved everybody, especially the tourists, because how they took care of them. And then when he had his family later on, they'd always say like, hey, Dad. He goes, hey, you guys want to be rich? Yeah, we want to be millionaires? Yeah. He goes, okay, pack your bags. He goes, what do you mean, pack your bags? He goes, pack your bags. We'll go mainland. You like being rich? You like money? You got to go mainland. In Hawaii, if you want to be rich, you can't do that. Because the most important thing is the wealth of Hawaii is not in money. He goes, it's about the people, the spirit. And I think from Papua's dad, if you could be bought with money, it's cheap. He goes, the best things in Hawaii is priceless and is available to everybody. And he spent a whole lifetime realizing how important the ocean was. And he dedicated everything. And his mentors, he said the first 30 years of his life, he surfed and loved surfing and enjoyed everything about it. The last 50 years, he spent trying to preserve it because he knew how important it was. And it was actually it was Wally Forsythe, when John Kelly, and actually was Lord Tallyho Blears that started Save Our Surf. And he was one, and he was kind of like their main guy, and they spent their whole lifetime making sure that we had surf sites for everybody. I mean, if you go to Alawai Beach Park, if you go to Harbor and there are 302 parking stalls, that was from them to making sure surfers could go surf. The beach access, that wasn't normal. They stopped different beach breaks from going over there. And he would take me, through the years, and we'd go down Waikiki and we'd walk all the way from Kaimana Beach all the way down, and we'd check in every bathroom, every water faucet, every little thing to make sure. He'd write it down. He'd check the beaches. He'd go in the bathrooms, check the toilets. He says, Tip-top, we gotta have the cleanest bathrooms. He said, we gotta make sure we're protecting our surf sites. He goes, surf sites are our ocean parks, because he understood the joy of what it did for him. He says, look at all these tourists. They spend thousands of dollars to come and enjoy this place. And he said, if the local people can come to the beach and just get in the water, whether it's riding a canoe or taking a swim or catching a wave, he said it'll change their life. And he really believed that wholeheartedly. And so his whole life was spent trying to preserve surf sites. And one of the main things he always said, and the last thing he'd always say is, no tea growings in Waikiki. For some reason, he says, that's the worst thing you can do. He said, you gotta protect the surf sites. And he said, tea growings will mess up the surf. He says, just remember this. He goes, no matter what, no tea growings in Waikiki. And I took it to heart. And that was kind of always his message about trying to teach us and share all his mana'o. And I look back and I was thinking about the lessons of Kahiel, about selfless generosity and all the good he tried to do with people, but so humble. I mean, I couldn't believe, he would never want this event tonight. I can't tell you how many different times they wanted to honor him, but to hear the words from Anna Trent Moore, he just loved Anna. One of the few places he did come was this. If Anna had a film festival, and Uncle George, towards the later years was slowing down, but one of the one things he always wanted to, he says, Tip-top, we gotta go see this thing because it's for Anna. And he loved Anna and he loved his dad so much. Buzzy Trent would work towards the end of the years. He'd walk about 20 miles a day. And one of the one stops he'd always go and stop by was Uncle George's shop. And all the way to the end, when you talk about a friend, I tell that to Keone every day. We talk about it. It says, when Keone calls, I go, when? You don't ask what, where, who, what. And when he said tonight, same thing, when. But just the love that he had, and really the love that he had for the people of Hawaii and all of you guys here, and he understood the joy of what surfing did for him. And like I said, the first 30 years he enjoyed it. The next 50, he wanted to preserve it to make sure that everybody could have as much love for the ocean as he did for everybody else. Mahalo and aloha.
Thank you for including me in this panel. It's a real honor to sit next to everyone here, because when everybody shares their story, we all grew up together, and that's what makes life so special in Hawaii. Okay, I grew up in Waikiki Beach. At second grade, going through Waikiki on the bus, I saw people surfing. I go, I want to be that. I want to be one of those guys, right? So I started going to the beach at 7, right? And George was there to help. he looked after me, like he's 8 years older, but I was young, right? Learning to swim, and but George was there making sure that I could go out and came in safely. So as it went on, I started surfing Queens every day. And we had to make money, so I was shining shoes. World War II in the 40s. After World War II, the sailors were coming in. And Leroy, Troy, and Bobby, they were there with me. We were shining shoes. We had a shoe shine box.
The banyan tree.
And we go, hey, buddy, you want to shine? If they're sitting by the banyan tree, they're sitting, right? They had shiny shoes, that's their job. But, hey, buddy, you want to take a shine? Oh, I don't know. If I can get so many kids, your mother had a one gift, you take a pay shine. If I guess it wrong, I give you a free shine. They looked at me, go ahead. I go, okay, your mother didn't have any kids, so Billy goes, put your foot in my box. So all of a sudden, I was starting to make money, right? And then, if they were walking and they weren't sitting, they came in groups, 4 or 5 at a time, sailors, right? By the hotels, they passed and I stopped them, hey buddy, you want to shine? No, they don't want to shine. Okay, if I can guess, listen, I'll tell you what. You want a piece of ass? I stopped everyone, every time. I said, you want to take a pay shine now? If I can tell you where to get a piece of ass? He said, yes. Okay, here we go. Reach in your back pocket and squeeze. So between that and making hats with Richard Keone, and also one of our best servers at the time was Squirty. And also, of course, Rabbit was around, and George was definitely around. And so we would look at these guys and go, we want to be like these guys, right? So you pay attention, right? So you get a little older, and you get a little better, and you can almost make a wave behind one of these guys. And I go, oh, I can make a wave behind George Downing, that's odd. But Rabbit, then I knew I was good. I was in the So then, but as you got a little older, now we're almost like the same age, even though there's 8 or 10 years between George and I can remember special occasions, right? One was we were surfing Laniakea in the summer. 18 feet, easy. It was huge, summer swell. George and myself and maybe someone else, I don't know, but I just remember George and I were there together. And it was a very special occasion for 18-foot surf in Laniakea in the summer. And another good time is we'd surf threes a lot. Rabbit would take me paddling when I was really, really young. They didn't have alimony yet, the channel wasn't cut, so we were paddling. Went by threes and started surfing threes. I couldn't believe threes, right? Yep. In the late 40s, early 50s, nobody was there, right? Nobody. Yep. You couldn't even get anybody to go out with you because it was a paddle. Anyway, I was out there little like Robert George, and George was on the outside, I was on the inside. And in those days, you cannot make a wave behind one of these guys, right? Because they hold you back. Yeah. And you have to wait. You can't be rushing, right? You have to wait until he goes, then you go. Yeah. But knowing now we're older and more consistently, more not equal, but together a lot, right? Yeah. So I couldn't make the wave because he couldn't make the wave. He made sure that I wouldn't make the wave, and he wouldn't make the wave. Anyway, George was a mentor. He was a guy I think we all looked up to and idolized, and his paddling, everything he did was, and surfing big. Makaha had a chance to surf there a couple of times. There was some really big surf. And from that experience, I went to Honolulu and had maybe 20 years of early Honolulu, and surfing Honolulu is one of the best rights in the world. When it's 25 feet, and it's coming from the west, you'll never forget that wave. Anyway, it's all because of spending time with George and Makaha, because that set the stage for the future of surfing huge surf. Anyway, thank you, George. We miss you. Without you, our memories go back forever, and mahalo. Hello, I'm probably the world's worst speaker.
Right on, Joel.
But I did do some thing to brag about, was that in 1946, I came out with the idea of a plastic surfboard. And I went around to the chemical companies and I found a substance called fiberglass. And I found another substance called urethane foam, not urethane foam, but plastic foam. And wanting to make a plastic surfboard for the folks, I searched around all the companies, chemical companies, and I found this substance called plastic foam. And I argued, I wanted to do a better idea, but the foam company I found got tired of talking to me, and they said, you take these samples that we have here, because it had been just right after the war, and plastics were the booming new thing. And so he said, you take these samples and get out of here. So I did, and I took them home, and I built 4 or 5 surfboards, and that was the beginning of the era of foam in surfboards. And the other thing, I hate to put down you men, but you guys really were running the women off of the waves. So this foam, the beauty of the foam is it was super light. So I thought, oh boy, I can make a girl's board. So I made boards for the girls, and it caught on.
Yeah.
And it spread wide, and today, well, the girls did a good job of riding the boards. In fact, it caused a new style of riding, and so here we have foam. I started to say, you men were pushing the girls off the boards and everything, and the girls got so good on these foam boards that they were going circles around the men on their old heavy long skirts. All you girls.
Right on.
I didn't do much else. Anyway.
Thanks, Joe. Along with Joe's inventiveness and the early pioneering of people like George and Wally Foyce, John Kelly, we had an exchange of ideas, and of course those early folks like George and Joe and Wally were influenced by Duke, who was a very good example of having fun in the surf, but yet being, being not afraid to challenge bigger waves and progress and influence we younger folks. But George especially was, he not only had a good sense of humor, but he would have a sense of being able to do as the ancient Hawaiians did. He would have hidden meanings in some of his statements, so you'd think he'd be giving you a compliment, but a second or two there, he'd like, oh, that looked like a criticism. But it felt very good to get, you know, even a kind word now and then from George, like, oh, nice takeoff kid. You'd almost, you know, just eat it in a really bad takeoff kid. But he did a lot of integral things that are very important for people trying to teach other people to surf, like taking his kids, Keone and Kainoa to maybe Kaiulu too, I don't know. But taking them to look at a surf break and look at the reef underneath first, so they would have an idea of how the wave took shape in different swells, as well as his work later on with the sailor surfer John Kelly and the Hawaiians. George was a great influence on all of us, and I want to thank his Ohana for being here today and being a good example of some of the concepts that he established. Thank you.
Right on, John.
Does this work, folks?
Yep.
Yes.
I lived in Pearl City, and I was kind of a misfit, and I was getting into trouble. So my father took me to Waikiki Beach to straighten me out, I guess. And then I caught a wave, and then George pushed me off the wave. But I went over on Queens, and the guy ran me over. So then my family, my cousins were friends with Goodyear, George's wife, and she was a really bitchin' girl. Just and then when there was a war, and people couldn't get jobs, and George gave me a job to just take care of his shop. He had a little shop, and he made me do a job, and I don't know what happened to that surfboard. But he kind of felt sorry for me because, you know, I didn't fit in too good with everybody. So he'd take me with him to go around and do things, and you know, I felt good, you know, because I could be with him. And then we had a racing. We raced, and after we were power racing, we was drinking beer, and then ran out of beer. So George put us in a car, and we went down to the beer bar, and we drove the car right inside. Right into where the guy was eating, And George started, "Hey, Asu, give us some beer." Man, that guy was good fun.
Boy, what about this group up here? I was so glad I had 1,000 years of experience, all taught by Uncle George. He always taught us to enjoy our youth fully because you only have it once, right? Thanks, George, for taking good care of him. BK for teaching the world how to make a badass bottom turn. Randy for the ambassador of surfing, and Joey here for, well, you don't want to know about Big Honolulu, but he does. And the man of surfboard industry, foam, polyester, Jock Sutherland School of Diplomacy, Chemo Hollinger, silent but deadly. I saw George at Rainbow Driving one day. He said, "Hey, how's it feel to catch a 100-foot wave?" I go, "Oh, bro, it's like being on the moon." Hey, big things come in small packages. He said, what did he tell me? He said, "Follow your heart. It'll show you the way." That's what he told me. I really, every time I thought about George, I'll never forget that to this day. And all the stories that you guys have is just tremendous for me. Thank you, Keone, and your whole family for having us. And that was the best surf movie I've ever seen in my life. Surfing will keep you young for the rest of your life, so keep doing it. And this is my surfing ohana right here.
It's been another extraordinary evening, an honor to hear your words, an honor to share with you, and a deep mahalo and an honor to have the Downing Ohana with us tonight. We thank you for being here. God bless. Mahalo, Maureen, and keep surfing. Aloha.
Thanks so much. Looking forward to 15 years.
You know what, Shuzu, remember that picture you took with George directed us to all?
Yes.
Yeah, everybody hold
Let's
me on.
do that. George was the one who set that up. So everybody's got to make a strength.
This will build strength.
This will build strength.
Okay, then, or maybe your face ready.
Put your face right there.
It's a bigger group this time.
Perfect. Nice. Let me turn my flash on. Nice.
And
Let me check.
Kainoa and Keone,
One
where
more.
are you?
1, 2, and...
People. Where's Anna?
Everybody swing over this way.
Oh yeah, where's Anna?
Anna.
Whatever.
Okay. Oh. Let me get one more back. Okay, I got everybody now. Okay, 1, 2, and 3. Let me go more. 1, 2, and 3.